Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Goldfish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is Friday, September 14th, 2018, and this is our weekly Country Roads with Winston Trout. And how are you today, Winston?
Well, I think I'm doing pretty good.
Good. It's a Friday, it's the end of the week, and it's a it's been very, very rainy on the East Coast,
I bet it has.
soaked like a sponge. And you're
Yeah.
just starting to get some relief on the West Coast, right?
Yeah, we finally got rain yesterday. I mean, here in the Portland, Oregon area, it was a dry summer, really. Everybody's really hurting for water. I mean, as far as, lawns and all that kind of thing. But we finally got some, pretty good rain yesterday. So things are looking up.
That's good. That's good. I wanted to, remind our viewers that the Goldfish Report uh, has been under attack, as you all may know. We've had our obviously our original YouTube channel was deleted and never restored. We also had our three blogs on WordPress deleted, but we do have a new blog on blogger.com, so we'll see how well that goes. But you can always find us on BitChute. We have a YouTube page, but I can tell you the YouTube page is um, totally banned, shadow banned, and the quality of the recording, which you've probably all noticed, is pretty poor. So they don't give us a good bandwidth when it comes to YouTube, but it's much better on BitChute. So if you want to go to our
Yeah.
BitChute page, it's no problem with BitChute actually. So we're quite happy with that. But in the face of what's going on with all this censorship, we are looking for alternatives. So please keep your eyes out for yourself, because if you want to view the content that we have, we're going to have to go to other platforms. That means our viewers have to as well. And it's a move that forces all of us to move together. And eventually their platforms will close in and implode on themselves, because what a terrible business model that is, to censor popular sites. That really is, it's never been a successful one. I'm not sure. They think they're really not thinking right about all of this, and they're putting their politics above um, really their company. And in doing so, I think they're going to be in for a very big surprise. But Q talks about this, and the president talks about this. They are he basically the president is giving them enough rope to hang themselves. So when there will be, and I because it's very predictable what they're going to do. It's so easy for the president to just intervene and stop this, but what he's doing is he's accumulating all the evidence of what they're doing, which makes for bigger damages and will justify the need to break them up, stop the monopoly, and invite fair competition. So I think ultimately that's where it's going to go. What do you think, Winston?
Yeah, it looks like they're trying to weaponize the internet. Um, but like I say, it's going to backfire on them. I mean, it has to.
Yeah. So just to remind our viewers, please follow us on Twitter and on our Goldfish Report news page, which is a very popular page. This is also our group. I don't know if our viewers were aware, but we do have a private group called the Goldfish Report group on Facebook, and you can go here and ask to join the group. And it is just, you know, uh, very selected things, and it's a place for people to have a conversation about this. One of the things I do miss from our YouTube channel was all the conversation and interaction with our viewers, and I do miss that a lot because we're doing it for you. So this is one place you can go. We can still have that dialogue, and that's really nice. But no shills. If you're a troll, you're going to be kicked out. We're not going to put up with it. It's just not productive. This is our main Goldfish Report news page. This is a very busy page. We post basically, I would say, close to uh, several hundred stories, maybe close to 1,000 stories a week. I would say probably around 800. So sometimes it's more than that. But we have very good viewership on this, and this is where you can go to find all the latest. First of all, to find all the latest goldfish reports, but also the latest news. And that news is what a lot of the reports are related to. So it's all very related. So it's not like unrelated information. So that's good to know. And ultimately, can you see this? This is our website. Winston did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when you screen share, it doesn't actually switch screens. Um, this is our website now. This also has to be updated right now, but this will show you all of the links and channels and platforms that we have. This is our current news feed on Twitter. This is our Facebook news page, so you could go there as well. And here's our Patreon page, and we did have a question from our Patreon viewer who was concerned with all the censorship, whether or not Goldfish Report was receiving the donate their pledge, and there's been no problem with the Patreon site. It's just that when our blog was deleted, um, the links on here will not work. They will go to a page that's blank. So if you can be patient with us, um, we will be replacing those links over the next week and should have that up for our Patreons. And we want to thank our patrons very much for supporting the Goldfish Report. Also, these are the links right here to all of our channels, and this also has to be corrected. I was not going to remove it because I was really hoping I wasn't going to remove the links for the blogs because I was really hoping to resolve it. I did put in several appeals. Funny enough, Winston, uh, there was an advertisement in my news feed on Facebook from WordPress talking of trying to get people to create blogs, and I made comments in there. I said, "Well, you deleted 3 of mine. Why would you're censoring free speech and all this?" And immediately they had to put in some like dialogue of they make up people, they make up
Oh yeah.
profiles, and they had all this, "Oh, this is great, I think I'm going to do this for my business, I think I'm going to do," I mean, like, nobody talks like that. Who comments on it? I mean, who's going to comment on a WordPress? It was like a long dialogue of different people because they're trying to do damage control and overcome. So they asked me, "Well, what page do you have that um, what's your address so we could check that you are a WordPress,
Yeah.
user?" And I'm like, I think people who have blogs and create blogs know who their servicer is. And
Yeah.
I'm like, you're joking, right? So I did put the link in there because I wanted other people to go to it too and see it. So, it is coming back. It is, going to, like you said, work against them. So if they only had a brain, Winston, if they only had a brain, which is the topic of our conversation today. If I only had a brain. And this is the topic of Winston's discussion today, and it does pertain to the elusive straw man. So I can't wait to hear all about this. And so it's all yours.
Well, I thought we'd start out a little bit of funny today. This goes to what's called political correctness. So let me just share this one little thing here. Okay, says the following is the 2007 winning entry for an annual contest at Texas A&M University, calling for the most appropriate definition of a contemporary term. This year's term was political correctness. Now here's the winner. It says political correctness is a doctrine fostered by delusional, illogical minority and rapidly promoted by an unscrupulous mainstream media, which holds forth the proposition that it is entirely possible to pick up a turd by the clean end.
That's very true. Just, create your fantasy world, whatever you want.
Hey, that was the winner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it made your university right.
That's good. That's good, Winston.
Well, anyway, I want to make a couple of cute comments about it. Like I say, people take life way too seriously perhaps sometimes, and so you got to chuckle at things.
Yeah.
Like this one day, my wife is Latino, And so we like to go to, what we call Mexican restaurants. And so we went in this one restaurant. Actually, it was the people that was at this restaurant. It was actually a Guatemalan, cuisine. If you want to call it that. So anyway, I have a hard time with the menus. They're written in Spanish, and I'm trying to think, what is it I fixed to order up here,
Mm.
So the waitress, she came over, and so I was having my typical moment where I was trying to figure out what it was, I was fixing to order, and so my wife and the waitress were kind of chuckling at me, because, here I was floundering, this white guy is floundering around in the menu trying to figure out what he wants to eat, and finally I called that waitress over. I said, come here a minute. And see, it's in the middle of summer. I've been outside working, so my arms were really, tanned up real well, So I told that waitress, said, hold your arm up to mine, So I held my arm next to hers, and my arm was darker than hers,
Wow.
So I said, who's the white person now, Oh, just fooling with him,
True.
But anyway, there's this, next to in my reading room.
Winston messes with people. You better watch out. You meet Winston. You're not sure if you're going to get a riddle or a $5 bill.
Well,
you need it.
In my reading room, we keep things to read, while we're contemplating the universe.
In your library.
Yeah, there's this one book I got there. Can you see this?
Stuff white people like. Oh, Winston. Oh,
no. Well, it's just a spoof, making fun of the political correctness.
Right.
Anyway, in this book, it has, I don't know, 130 or 40 different things, that he lists here. So he just, on a particular subject, he writes a commentary that's kind of humorous, to take a poke of fun, at the white people mentality, and it's just for fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, the one
you're not being racist. Let's just make it very clear. You're not being racist. You're just poking fun at yourself, at ourselves. I know, because it is
poking fun.
I mean, because this political correctness had to have been invented by white people.
Well, it must have been, because how do you pick up a turd by the clean end?
Yeah, exactly. Not that it matters. I mean, I think we're all the same. I don't really look at things in a racist way at all.
I don't. Anyway, I'll just read one part of this book here, because it talks about Portland, Oregon. So I kind of have a feel for.
Okay.
What he's saying here. It says,
very good.
Says Portland, Oregon is essentially a Lord of the Flies scenario, with white people in the Pacific Northwest instead of children in the South Pacific. In both cases, we have a situation whereby a homogenous group of people is left alone in an area with no one to keep them in check. Eventually, the euphoria and self-congratulation evolve into savagery and murder.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's statistically, Portland, Oregon is the whitest metropolis in the United States, and unsurprisingly, it is also the most bike-friendly, vegan-friendly, GLBT-friendly city in America. And it just goes on and on. I mean, it's just for fun.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well, the commentary, what it does, it has people look at, okay, what am I doing? What am I doing? And so. It's just, like I say, it's for fun. And if people don't, stop and have a chuckle at their situations and circumstances, you can't be serious about this stuff. Look what happens when people get way too serious about all this stuff. And so, like I say, you can have fun with it. You can have fun with it. Nothing wrong with that.
Anything to make you laugh, because that really helps to, heal. It really does good things for the body, especially when you're drinking, these eating all this GMO food. You got to do something good for your body.
Well, yeah, they pointed out in this book, Well, it was interesting. One of the sections here talked about, again, they're just using white people to say people in general, really.
Yeah, sure.
because people in general, you'll fall victim to some of these things this fellow points out in his book and stuff. And they were talking about, poking fun at, the big international corporations, like Walmart and McDonald's and all this kind of stuff. And so here, actually yesterday, I was talking to a young lady that just come back from Thailand. So I wanted to hear all about it. I wanted to know about, the different things, the people. And so she had stayed in the second largest city in Thailand. And then she made a comment about going to 7-Eleven. I said, 7-Eleven? 7-Elevens in Thailand? She said, yeah. I said, they got 7-Elevens everywhere. I think 7-Eleven in Thailand.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's, it sounded kind of weird to me, but once she explained, that not even the local people can drink the water. They go to the 7-Eleven to get their drinking water. And so anyway, it is interesting, the different things across the planet. Yeah, do you have something?
Yeah, we're going to have a momentary visitor. We're going to have a momentary visitor. So we're going to take just a short break before we go back.
Okay.
But when that happens, I'll let everybody know. So you can just, I don't know if you want to, maybe we should just take a little pause right now. So we'll be right back.
Okay, yeah, fine.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just move on now, Winston, to If I Only Had a Brain.
Yeah, we had a little joke about, just taking a look at herself, and having a chuckle, like I always say, it ain't easy being white. We had a fellow, I don't know, about late 70s, I recall, he put out a song or kind of a rap song, which was, it ain't easy being white, and he went through all the different things, that it was kind of funny. I haven't heard it lately. It wasn't that altogether that popular, but when we start talking about political correctness and all those kind of things, then people have a chance, to evaluate themselves and the people around them and stuff. And I personally have had no problems dealing with anybody of any race or ethnicity. I can get along with just about anybody, as it appears. Mm-hmm. And so it's because I don't take myself to be anything different than anybody else on the planet.
No, I only have problems when they try to shove their viewpoints down, into my head, or so to speak.
Yeah, well, you can always diffuse all that.
Yeah, those are the kinds of conversations that become very uncomfortable very
well,
quickly.
Sometimes people profile me. Yeah. I mean, they equate Kentucky with like Mississippi or Alabama. So several times, as I've been in the West, people have assumed about me because I'm from Kentucky that I would be a typical mentality of somebody from the deep South, and I'm not.
Right. No, you're not anything typical of people in the deep South. And they think because I'm from Jersey that, I'm going to be like, what was it? What was that?
Gangsta.
A gangsta, although I do have a gangsta nickname, but I won't share it.
Three fingers Louie, huh?
Yeah, right. Well, fingers. Fingers. Fingers.
I'm laughing here now. I'll start coughing.
All right. Fingers is part of the name, though. It's funny. Really funny.
You just got to chuckle about it. You can't. Yeah. If you take life so seriously, that it gets you down. What good did that do?
No, but I have to say something. I was in an airport recently, and I definitely could pick out someone that was from, I'm not kidding you, I kid you not, I could pick out somebody who was from New Jersey and almost where from New Jersey they were from, because of how there's just things about them you could pick out. And I asked them when I was in the airport with them, and they said, yeah, and I knew that they were like from this area that I was, like, yeah, and I wasn't surprised. But go ahead.
Believe it or not, you got a lot of hillbillies in New Jersey.
Yeah.
I've run into a lot of them.
Oh, yeah, no, because it was the Garden State. Now it's the Asphalt State. But it used to be the Garden State. So there's a lot of country, a lot of farming. So there would be a lot of farmers. Actually, a lot of people from the South came up here, too, because, they wanted to get jobs and work.
Yeah. Yeah, I talked to somebody one time. He made a pretty good case, and I can't remember all the details of it now, but he was making the case that the first capital of the United States of America was actually in New Jersey, not Philadelphia.
Hmm. I
And
wouldn't
I
be
can't remember
surprised.
what. It's been so long ago that I can't remember it. But anyway,
Right.
hey, it is what it is.
Well, it could have been Trenton, right? That's the capital of the
Maybe
state,
that's
but it
what he
could
was
have been
talking
Trenton.
about.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since he made that argument to me, and I
Right.
just had to take him for what he said because it was historical what he was pointing out.
Right. Well, the Battle of Trenton, where Washington crossed the Delaware River there, and
Yeah,
yeah, no, it was a very historic battle. So I would agree. I would agree with you there.
yeah, it could be. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's get on with this other because I want to point some things out.
Let's move on.
Let me
Our
first.
viewers are waiting for us to get to the point. Sorry, it's a
Well,
Friday, folks. Man, we're just like, whew, getting to
there has been a lot of interpretation of a book called The Wizard of Oz. I mean, when this movement, if you want to call it that, first came out, a lot of people were looking at that particular book
mm,
and making point because it's very demonstrative of
mhm.
some of the things that
Uh-oh. Oh,
we situation. Uh, yeah, it froze up there for a minute. Don't worry about it. Anyway, uh, the author, I don't see a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people make comments about the book and the different stories and stuff, but the author, they don't talk that much about it. It's L. Frank Baum, Baum, and he was in the Theosophical Society. I think people might be familiar with that. And then also, the big question was just how deep he was into the Illuminati, because he's obviously the Illuminati type, thought process. And so people were just arguing, well, just how deep inside was he,
mhm.
to reveal these secrets, because they do come out with these secrets of their point of view. Yes, ma'am. The record button's not on.
Yeah, it's on.
Oh, it's on.
Yes.
Okay, I don't see
Sorry,
the
we had
word.
we had a little we had a little internet blip here, so I think we're just
Okay, all right, I'll continue on then.
yeah, it's recording on my end. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, Baum actually died, I think, in 1919. So he was, in that period of time, which is a very interesting point, in history and so forth. And a lot of people don't know it, but he wrote, actually, he authored quite a few different books, and I'll show them right here. You see that?
Okay.
So these, I think, let's see, all these books he wrote, and some of these are actually short stories.
Hmm.
So he did quite a bit of writing, not just the Wizard of Oz, like everybody reads, when they're kids in school and stuff like that. But he actually wrote quite a bit of things. And so, you can learn ever so much if you understand, what it is you're looking at just by, because, they in fiction form, they open up and tell you things. And
Right.
so if you have eyes to see,
Hmm.
then you'll understand, what it is you're looking at.
Okay.
But today we want to go over one particular item uh, that was, put in fiction form, and that had to do with Dorothy from Kansas,
Mhm.
and a lot of people saw the movie way back when it first came out as black and white, and then they put it into however they do that, they made it into color so you could see the colors, and one of the things a lot of people key off on is the slippers, that Dorothy was using to do her magic, clicking her heels together 3 times and
Right.
going back and all that kind of stuff. But originally, those slippers were not red; they were silver. And so, anyway,
Oh, no,
there's a
yeah.
lot of
It's used for the MK Ultra though. They use the whole
yeah, uh,
Wizard of Oz and the red shoes have to do with the child pedophilia stuff.
yeah. If you
That's
see,
terrible.
there's been quite a bit on the internet about all these guys, running around wearing red shoes and all that.
Sick. Yeah.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah, it's sick.
Anyway, I wanted to refer to this one article I'd written some time ago as a part of a 3-part series of DVDs, again, which are obtainable, on our website and so forth. But I put together a 3 DVD series on the straw man. And so this article I'm fixing to show is part of one of those. And so I start right out with, let's see here. Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of taking a little, chuckle at this, because the title of this article I wrote is called "The Elusive Straw Man," or "If I Only Had a Brain." Now, some years ago, a friend of mine, we were studying all this stuff, and he was doing quite a bit of work in the court system. So I don't know where he got it at, but there's a little sticky thing of the straw man, like from the Wizard of Oz movie. And down below it said, "If I only had a brain."
Right.
he went and stuck that on one of his court pleadings.
Oh my God, you're kidding. That sounds as bad as me saying this whole thing was a black magic spell in my court papers, and it was all black magic.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the judge wrote him back a nasty note.
Ooh, if I only had a brain, what did he say? That's funny.
Yeah,
What did he say? Tell us. That's funny.
Yeah. Anyway, this first little bit here from the book. So let's just read through this. A lot of people, have heard about all this, but maybe they haven't read the book, or maybe if they did read it, maybe they just didn't exactly. Because when I first read the book as a kid, to me it was just a good, fun story to read. It was a fairy tale, and so I read it, as a kid. And then later on, when people started to analyze what Baum, who was Illuminati, were trying to put out in his fiction, then, people started picking it apart and realizing what was being said. So let's just go over a little bit of this. So I'll just read it here. It said Dorothy leaned, because Dorothy's on her way to Oz now. All right? So Dorothy leaned her chin upon her hand and gazed thoughtfully at the scarecrow. Its head was a small sack stuffed with straw, with eyes, nose, and mouth painted on it to represent a face. An old pointed blue hat that had belonged to some munchkin was perched on his head, and the rest of the figure was a blue suit of clothes, worn and faded, which had been stuffed with straw. On the feet were some old boots with blue tops, such as every man wore in this country, and the figure was raised above the stalks of corn by means of a pole stuck up its back. While Dorothy was looking earnestly into the queer painted face of the scarecrow, she was surprised to see one of the eyes slowly wink at her. She thought she must have been mistaken at first, for none of the scarecrows in Kansas ever wink. But presently, the figure nodded its head to her in a friendly way. Then she climbed down from the fence and walked up to it, while Toto, remember the little dog, ran around the pole and barked. "Good day," said the scarecrow in a rather husky voice. "Did you speak?" asked the girl in wonder. "Certainly," answered the scarecrow. "How do you do?" "Well, I'm pretty well, thank you," said Dorothy politely. "How do you do?" "I'm not feeling well," said the scarecrow with a smile, "for it is very tedious being perched up here night and day to scare away crows." "Can't you get down?" asked Dorothy. "No, for this pole is stuck up my back. If you will please take away the pole, I shall be greatly obliged to you." So Dorothy reached up both arms and lifted the figure off the pole. For being stuffed with straw, it was quite light. "Thank you very much," said the scarecrow, when he had been set down on the ground. "I feel like a new man." Dorothy was puzzled at this, for it sounded queer to hear a stuffed man speak and to see him bow and walk along beside her. "Who are you?" asked the scarecrow when he had stretched himself to yawn. "And where are you going?" My name is Dorothy, said the girl, and I'm going to the Emerald City to ask the Great Oz to send me back to Kansas. See, she wanted to get back on the private side. She wanted to get back to reality. Where is the Emerald City? He inquired, and who is Oz? Well, why don't you know? She returned in surprise. No, indeed, I don't know anything. Again, this is the scarecrow talking to us. It says, no, indeed, I don't know anything. You see, I'm stuffed, so I have no brains at all, he answered sadly. Oh, said Dorothy, I'm awfully sorry for you. Do you think, he asked, if I go to the Emerald City with you, that Oz would give me some brains? I cannot tell, she returned, but you may come with me if you like. If Oz will not give you any brains, you'll be no worse off than you are now. See, good reason and logic there. That's true, said the Scarecrow. You see, he continued confidently, I don't mind my legs and arms and body being stuffed because I cannot get hurt. If anyone treads on my toes or sticks a pin in me, it doesn't matter, or I can't feel it. But I do not want people to call me a fool. And if my head stays stuffed with straw instead of with brains, as yours is, how am I ever going to know anything? I understand how you feel, said the little girl, who was truly sorry for him. If he will come with me, I'll ask Oz to do all he can for you. Thank you, he answered gratefully. And they walked back to the road. Dorothy helped him over the fence, and they started along the path of yellow brick for the Emerald City. Toto did not like this addition to the party at first. He smelled around he smelled around the stuffed man as if he suspected there might be a nest of rats in the straw. And he often growled in an unfriendly way to the Scarecrow. Don't mind Toto, said Dorothy to her new friend. He never bites. Oh, I'm not afraid, replied the Scarecrow. He can't hurt straw. Do let me carry that basket for you. I shall not mind it, but if I can't get tired, for I can't get tired. I'll tell you a secret, he continued as he walked along. There is only one thing in the world I'm afraid of. What is that? Asked Dorothy. The Munchkin farmer who made you? No, answered the Scarecrow. It's a lighted match. Okay, so we got this story going along here. We got this elusive straw man created with straw, who felt no pain, who was not afraid of the dog, Toto, and whose only fear was a lighted match. What shall we do with a man made of straw? Are we trapped into some Hegelian dialectic vortex? Oh, geez. I can't believe I wrote something like that. From which we cannot escape.
Really
yeah. Well, all the stuff in black is me writing now.
Yeah, okay.
The stuff in blue would be out of the book or other sources I'll show here in a minute. Are we engulfed in universal mind control techniques? Well, let us consider a moment as the frustration melts away with the realities of our situation. First, let us describe this man of straw or dummy, as some like to say. All right, now we're going to get into a few definitions so that people would understand. Stramonius homo. This is a Latin term. It means a man of straw, one of no substance, put forward as bail or surety. Now, this is right out of Black's Law Dictionary in the 6th edition. Okay?
Oh.
Now, I've emphasized this word here, put forward as bail or surety. Now, we've talked about bail and we've talked about sureties in the past.
Whoa.
Okay?
Yeah.
So it's the straw man that's being put forward as bail or surety. Okay, then everybody knows what straw is, I hope. All right, now straw man. It's a front. a third party who is put up in name only to take part in a transaction. Nominal party to a transaction, one who acts as an agent for another for the purposes of taking title, for the purposes of taking title to real property and executing whatever documents and instruments the principal may direct. The person who purchased property for another to conceal identity of the real purchase to accomplish some purpose otherwise not allowed. To accomplish some purpose otherwise not allowed.
Yep. This sums up, all the country roads we've done.
Yeah, we've talked about this concept.
Right.
In other words, as I have mentioned, in our present commercial system, because we're dealing with metes and bounds, for a real man to do that would be breaking of natural or God's law. But we do it. How do we do it? We use a straw man to do it, because it's not lawful for a real man to do these things. You see?
Yeah, but it also says that you're not allowed to do it.
Yeah, you're not allowed to.
Not allowed to do, and even creating a straw man, though, is not.
Again, get back to metes and bounds. Remember last time we had talked about the difference between metes and bounds and just needs and wants.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to go into metes and bounds, which is a measurement of reality, we've created a fiction. And so how do we deal with fictions? We use a straw man to deal with the fiction, because for a real man to do those things is illegal. I mean, it's unlawful. See? Anyway, get into Webster's dictionary here. It says the straw man, a weak or imaginary opposition set up only to be easily confuted, or a person set up to serve as the cover for an unusually questionable transaction.
There we have it. Bingo.
Well, my point is, a lot of times when people first come upon this concept of straw man, they think they're being misused and this, that, and the other. So what we've tried to do as Solutions in Commerce, or people who are knowledgeable on the subject, is try to educate people on the nature of a straw man and why it is necessary in our present commercial system.
Right, in commerce, exactly.
Yeah, so you have to get over the shock, first off, and then you have to get past the anger, because I see it so many times when people come upon some of this knowledge for the first time. They become angry.
Yes, absolutely, because we should have if we can't do commerce as a natural man or woman, then we should at least know about it. We should at least
because
know
you have to use it or get out of commerce.
Right.
See, the only alternative to the commerce that we use, using straw men and all that kind of stuff, is go back into the pagan system of barter and trade. Now, eventually, this has been our point on several of our productions before.
Right.
When we start to go into the stars and do commerce with these other people from other places and stuff, there ain't no straw man involved in that. They don't use money. They don't use that kind of measurement. And so it's important to understand this concept as we carry on our commerce on this planet at the present time. Will we get past this? Yes. But presently, this is what we're using. And people just, you need to comprehend it. You need to understand it, because if you don't understand it, you'll never get over the anger.
They're angry because we were not told. We were not given access to it. It's been hidden. So people are angry because of the amount of time
They
wasted.
think they've been tricked,
Yeah,
and to a certain extent, they have been.
I
But
know,
that's
but they also feel like there's a large majority of their time of their life here has been wasted because they didn't know it. That's worth getting angry about.
yeah,
And how many people have suffered and lives really suffered because of lack of knowledge, as Jesus said, my
that's
people
it.
will perish for lack of knowledge. I mean, it's hard to imagine you know, I don't
Yeah.
know. I know it's going back. You better come back soon. Come back, Jesus. We need you.
Actually, he has come back. He just hadn't appeared in the second coming like people, because that's kind of in the future. The second coming is not a part of the third dimension. Actually, it's not even a part of the fifth dimension. I speculate myself that the second coming will be when we get into a seventh dimensional, when the new Jerusalem comes. Anyway, I don't get off on that.
Sure, no, but we'll talk about that another time. Maybe that would be interesting.
Okay. All right. So by inference, we're realizing that the straw man is criminal in nature. The
Mm-hmm.
straw man is an entity created to do something that would be unlawful for a man to do. The straw man is used as a cover for usually questionable transactions. Sounds like spy stuff. Anyway, the straw man is purchasing property to hide the identity of the real purchaser, which is not allowed. Well, that immediately makes one curious as to who can actually purchase property. So for someone other than a straw man to purchase a property is not allowed. Oops. I guess we have to look at purchase.
Because,
What?
well, it's the title, right?
Yeah, you just purchase and title.
Right.
Like we pointed out, we live in a bifurcated system, and I had equated a lot of that to the concept of trust, where you have bifurcated title. And that is, the trustee has the legal title, and the beneficiary then would have possessory or usage title. So we live in a bifurcated system. And so again, when we start talking about the use of a straw man to purchase a title, and that's all that happens in a mortgage. People don't realize that. Technically, the only thing you're doing is purchasing a lien position on the title. The people don't realize it, but their lien position on that title is probably, third or fourth position. There's a lot ahead of you on that title.
Yeah.
Now, using the technology that we've shown, especially in that reclaiming your status and assets, you can remove all those title holders in front of you. And then recently we did a webinar on quiet title, and we should have that DVD available from that webinar here pretty soon. As soon as it comes up, certainly we'll notify people, because a lot of people, came to the webinar, but a lot of people didn't, who are interested in quiet title. And so we should have that DVD available here soon. And when we do, we'll announce it.
We should have talked about it a little bit more on our reports, because I didn't even have the date, Winston. I didn't get to go myself.
Oh yeah, that's a mistake on my part.
I really, think I should have done that. That's okay. We'll talk about it next time on our reports, okay?
Yeah. Now I start to fold in the concept of the Chapter 11 bankruptcy that Mr. Traffic Handy got in trouble for announcing.
Oh,
remember
right.
that?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah. The reason may lie with the operation of the United States, or the U.S. Incorporated, as we call it, and all of the U.S. citizens in the reorganizational Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Now that actually has been converted into a Chapter 7, and that's how Trump is able to drain the swamp. They turned the Chapter 11 into a Chapter 7 liquidation. That's what's happened. Because, like I say, the United States Incorporated, who were the debtor in possession on the Chapter 11 for the longest time, were not operating it properly, and so the Queen's Council of Switzerland had to come in and remove the United States Incorporated as the debtor in possession, and they put a receiver and a trustee to basically unfold the Chapter 11. And then it got down to the point to stay in the Chapter 11, the United States Incorporated, which was a maritime corporation registered in Puerto Rico, had to come up with something like $440 billion to stay in the Chapter 11, and they couldn't.
Right.
So I think it was May the 6th of 2016 that the United States Chapter 11 was over with. So it had to go to liquidation under a Chapter 7, and that's why they put Trump in, was actually to run the Chapter 7 bankruptcy. People call it draining the swamp, but actually what he was doing was doing the liquidation on Chapter 7, because the Chapter 11 had dishonored, and so the Chapter 7 had to be put in place simply to liquidate the assets of the United States Incorporated, which Trump's doing.
Right, but he's liquidating the assets for our biggest creditor, which is China.
Well, I'm just saying that's why he's put in place, was to undo the Chapter 11 in a Chapter 7 liquidation.
Yeah, but the creditors get to who's the beneficiary of that liquidation, and it's the creditors, which is China. So I'm just trying to make a point. I'm trying to make a point. China is going to be making because of this very point. You're going to see asset recuperation, which is what's been going on.
Okay, but let's get back. Who are the creditors of the United States Incorporated? The people. That's why I said, if Trump goes in and liquidates the Federal Reserve Bank and finds $1 trillion, whose money? Does it belong to China? Hell no.
Right. Well, there's that argument that's being made right now that China.
Well, yeah, but they're going to lose that argument.
But we've been borrowing the debt. Who's the grantor? Could be the American people, but the creditors were China. So maybe the people were the surety for that debt for China. Which
we're fixing to get into that a little bit further here.
Okay.
We can iron some of that out when we go a little bit further with this discussion we're making here.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to point out is that, since 1871 and consequently down the road, the federal side of the government, the shadow government, as it were, eventually to function, got into a Chapter 11 reorganization. Now, this is maybe we ought to have a discussion about Chapter 11s a little bit.
Okay.
Because the Chapter 11 is a bankruptcy for a corporation. And so if like what Trafficani got up and said there in Congress, if they're running the Chapter 11 bankruptcy, what does that prove about the federal government? It's corporation. And it was. The United States Incorporated, a maritime corporation registered in Puerto Rico.
Right.
Okay, so that's what it had come to, and they were running the Chapter 11. Now, in the Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which is a reorganizational bankruptcy for a corporation, the one who files the Chapter 11 is known as debtor in possession. And in technical terms, what that basically means is the debtor in possession acts as the trustee. Now, in a Chapter 11 or any bankruptcy, what is the purpose of the trustee? It's to represent the interest of the creditors. Now, who are the creditors of the United States? It's not China. It's the people who have pledged. That's who the creditors are. And and so all this monkey business about going forth, back all these countries making claims and all that kind of stuff. Well, that was what I was trying to make a point the other day. That if Trump under Chapter 7 liquidation goes in and liquidates the Federal Reserve Banks and finds $1 trillion, whose trillion is that? It has to be refunded to the surety, the creditors. And if he tries to steal that, treason is only just begun. Because we go around and pointing fingers at this one and that one, saying, "Hey, that's treason over here, treason over there." Well, go ahead and steal the money of the creditors and see what we call it. See what I mean? So things are, you really, 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 really need to study bankruptcy. And I've pointed this out many, many times. I mean, some of those earliest country roads that we did, I talked about, the bankruptcy that started in 1789, and then the one that started in 1871. You see what I mean? So if you really want to study politics, study bankruptcy.
Yeah, right.
That's what it all is.
No, that was a good report we did, Winston. I'm not sure if it's up, but on the archives yet. But it was a very good report that explained
Yeah.
all of this about bankruptcy. It was very
Yeah.
good. Everyone should study that.
Yeah. Okay. So in the chapter 11, the debtor in possession is the party who files the bankruptcy, and they always have to file as a dummy straw man. And they did. It's called the United States Incorporated, Puerto Rico. If a man tried to file a bankruptcy as a man, the court would have to convert it into an in-law proceeding, and that man would have to be executed instead of using a substitute man or a straw man. So the real man does not need to fear the lighted match that would destroy his man of straw. Remember the scarecrow? He was only afraid of one thing: a lighted match. That's all he was afraid of. He wasn't afraid of getting stomped out, kicked, or having needles stuck into him or whatever. He wasn't afraid of any of that because he couldn't feel it. What is the lighted match that the straw man fears? Chapter 7, liquidation. That's the lighted match. You see what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So let's go look at some of these other concepts here. Traditionally, bail. Remember we talked about this other definition up here. Let's see, where was it? Wasn't that one? Yeah, it had to be that. Anyway, okay, yeah. Definition out of Black's Law Dictionary. Now, people need to understand that Black's Law Dictionary is a commercial dictionary. It's not like Bovier's. That's a law dictionary. Black's Law Dictionary is for commerce. Okay, so in a commercial dictionary, this is the definition is given of a strawmanius homo, or a straw man. The Latin word, which means a man of straw, one of no substance, put forward as bail or surety.
Right.
Okay, now we're going to get into a little bit more definition here. Traditionally, bail is some form of property deposited or pledged to a court in order to persuade it to release a suspect from jail on the understanding that the suspect will return for trial or forfeiture of bail. Remember that discussion we talked about, about the admiralty courts, about how the a complaint would come in, the bailiff would go lock up the ship to the pier so it couldn't leave,
right,
until the owner came in with surety,
right,
to guarantee the owner's appearance. And based upon that, so as not to interrupt commerce, once the surety was put up, the bailiff would go out and take the chain off the boat. Okay, so I hope you're seeing how these things roll.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So traditionally, bail is some form of property deposited or pledged to a court in order to persuade it to release the subject from jail on the understanding the suspect will return for trial or forfeit the bail. In most cases, bail money will be returned at the end of the trial. Whether it's guilty or not guilty, the bail has to be returned because it's only an insurance policy. It's only a guarantee. Okay, now, a surety. Now, relate back to what we had talked about in Hebrews 7:22 we're talking about Jesus. It says Jesus is the surety for that program that was being displayed there in the book of Hebrews. Right. Okay? Which demonstrates what? King James Version is a commercial version.
Right.
hopefully people see that. Just like Black's Law Dictionary. It's not a dictionary that you would use at law or in law, pardon me. You know, you'd be looking at Bovier's, you'd be looking at maxims and all those kind of things. All right. So a surety is a person who agrees to be responsible for the debt or obligation of another. Additionally, the situation in which a surety is most typically required is when the ability of the primary obligor or principal to perform its obligations under a contract in question, or when there is some public or private interest which requires protection from the consequences of the principal's default or delinquency. Now, you remember, one time I gave the example of Appalachia, the coal mining, how that when they went in to do a strip mine or something like that, the company that was going to do the strip mining had to put up a bond or a surety to guarantee that they would restore the natural, forest and whatnot. And then, of course, they'd go bankrupt and wouldn't do it. But again, if it looks like that the strip mining company is going to damage the environment, then they're required to put up a surety. So in the event they walk off and don't do it, somebody else has the wherewithal, the money to go in and restore it as it was. But that system completely broke down because the government officials got paid off. They got bribed. And they didn't make them do it. And so in consequence of that, many places in Appalachia look like a moonscape. As a hillbilly, that kind of gets my dander up. I'll put it that way. Anyway, in most common law jurisdictions, a contract of suretyship is subject to the statute of frauds or its equivalent local laws and is only enforceable if memorialized by writing signed by the surety. That would be like a bond or getting a bond from an insurance company. So it's in writing. If the surety is required to pay or perform due to the principal's failure to do so, the law will usually give the surety a right of subrogation, allowing that person to recover the cost of making payment or performance on the principal's behalf. All right, so let's go to Appalachia again, strip mining. So they were required to put up, a bond to guarantee that they would restore the environment once they were done. Okay, they didn't do it. All right, so technically, the party that's holding the surety or the bond, which would typically be the government, then they could come in and restore it, of course, which they didn't. But if they did have to do that, then they could go back to the a strip mining company and extract that value. They could. That's what's called. So suretyship is an important concept. Now let's talk about Jesus as surety. All right. So if he has to, if he is in a position where he has to pay for the sins of the principals, which are the people, then what does he have the right to do to those principals that he had to pay their debt or their sin? Why do you think that Jesus is God? See what I mean? Once you start to understand the concept of how these works, the plan of salvation starts to make a whole lot better sense. I mean, I'm trying to put it into practical here. So that
you
people
are, but
understand.
I think you should, for people who might not be following you, just explain a little bit what you're saying. What happens when he takes on the surety for the people?
Yeah. Okay. So the people come along. They come on. This is all part of the plan. I mean, I'm not trying to point fingers at all us sinners. I mean, I think it's Paul that said, "For all have sinned to come short of the glory." Okay, that's part of the plan because you have to learn by experience, and then when you're learning, you make mistakes. Okay, and so anyway, so what for all the people 'Cause, you know, man, I don't want to have
So
to.
you're saying that Jesus took on the surety for all of for all of our mistakes
Yeah,
because they foreknew that we were all going to make mistakes.
yes, it's
We were
part of the
here,
plan.
right? We were here to learn, and in
Yeah,
that
how
learning
do all the
process, you don't learn by doing it right. You learn by doing it wrong. So we were
go
going
back to the allegory on the
right.
Mentonite records with the everlasting covenant, which they come along and said, "Hey, this is no good. Let's make it into an everlasting covenant,
I know. I'm just
a
trying
new
to
and
help.
everlasting covenant."
Right. I'm just trying to help put it into context and show the relationship between the different things we talked about and different concepts. So
Yeah.
it might not be obvious to some people, Winston. That's okay. I'm just trying to,
Well, they need to go
put it
back
into
perhaps and
other words.
review some of those other
Okay.
country roads so you can get a concept.
Well, I'm doing that for them too. I'm trying to help
Okay.
connect those dots. I think that's my
I
role,
know.
is
I
to help
know.
them connect the dots between our reports and concepts to the extent that I can for them. So,
Yeah. Well, that's good you do that. Like I say, sometimes, I assume that people have listened to previous reports and can start to connect the dots.
yeah.
And so that's why we recommend people go back and review, some of these other
Yeah.
things that we brought up so that when I come in here with the elusive straw man and start to make these
Right.
points, that it would have a better chance of comprehension. That's all.
Well,
That's all I'm
it's
trying to say.
okay, but as exactly, and when you're and I think what's important is to point out the relationships between those things. That's all. Not to go over it, but it's not always still these are complex concepts and you still need to
Yeah.
be it's still important. You can't presume somebody's connecting those dots. So it
Yeah.
is important because it's still very complicated and they might not see that relationship. It might be a little bit too big of a scale for them to really connect some of those dots. And I thought it was important because it really does show that this was all a plan. This was all a
Yeah.
learning experience on this planet, and that was why Jesus did what he did because he knew we were going to make mistakes because that's how we learn. So we were here to advance our souls, and it's just that you know we I don't think you know had any idea that we would be meeting with such dark, forces that would
Well,
it
look,
eventually really prevent us from evolving. So it kind of didn't work well because the very forces that were supposed to help provide these, lessons for us ended up preventing us from even evolving. So
yeah.
that was a missight, a misjudgment somewhere because that's the reality that we're in. As you and I lament all the time on our reports, is that this process is just taking too long, too many delays, too many things that are not allowing us to evolve. Soul contracts that can't be realized because the process got hijacked, as you have said.
Yeah. Yeah. But how do you prevent it from getting hijacked? And that is people understanding the process. And so that's what I've tried to do with these reports and so forth is try to connect all. Folks, you're not going to learn all this stuff in Sunday school or even in theological seminary.
No.
They don't teach it because they don't know it. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. But I have noticed over the years that for the most part, a lot of the Protestant Christian churches, and to some extent even in the Catholic,
Mm.
and with these homilies and so forth, they're trying to preach a feel good religion without getting down to the basic of what makes it work. So just how important is a proper concept of this Jesus figure is ever so important. Because, without that key of knowledge, you're simply not going to get it. I'll put it that way. Without that key of knowledge, because when you go and study the events that he participated in, for instance, that business about the Garden of Gethsemane, like we pointed out last time, where he sweated blood from inside his body, introducing the private into the public. See, that that's an important concept. And then when he was taken down off the cross, the scripture says that his spirit went into the spirit world and he unlocked the debtor's prison, because all the people who had been involved in the Levitical law, the law of execution, the law of blood sacrifice, and all those kind of things were held in debtor's prison, because the Levitical law could only create a discharge. So the debt had to be accounted for at some future time. And it was. And so when the body was laying in the tomb, the spirit went into the spirit world and unlocked the prison doors to let all the debtors or sinners to come out, because now the discharge had been satisfied. And the scriptures are very plain on this, that after his resurrection, there were something like 2,000 people who were resurrected and were walking the streets of Jerusalem. I mean, look at the story. Look what happened. And they didn't make that up. That's something really happened in history. And so, you have to, at some point understand the process. And then after he had accomplished those things, after the 3 days, so forth, then his body reanimated, his spirit came back into it, and then it went through the whole process of what we call ascension. Now I keep hearing people all the time, yammering on and on about ascension. Really? Okay, do you understand what ascension is? That's my question. And so most of, or a good part of, the people who are yammering about ascension never factor in the Jesus factor. And that is the most important concept that you have to factor in when you start to talk about ascension. And they just don't get it. And so is ascension possible? If you don't factor that in, the answer is no. And so that's the message of the gospel. And like I say, it's unfortunate, that our theologians, our preachers, and so forth have simply reverted to feel-good sermons rather than trying to point these things out. And so, like I say, you don't get this knowledge and information from the sources that people typically are looking to get this information. Because number one, they don't know it. You can't preach what you don't know. So I guess I'm a preacher, I reckon. Yeah, you're on mute if you're chuckling there. Well, let's go on a
Sorry,
little bit
yeah, sorry.
further.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, this is what I'm trying to say is that this is, this is what's difficult, is trying to connect these dots and put this illusion. What people really have to realize is there's two realities. There's the illusion that we're living because
Yeah,
they've kept that curtain. Let's go back to Wizard of Oz. They've kept that curtain and that big wizard up there, and then
yeah,
there's how it actually works and what the
yeah,
real structure is, and that they're using. It's called the cord. They pull the cord and the curtain moves. So what
yeah.
is what are the what are the elements of the cord and the curtain? That's what we want to know.
Yeah, in essence, what I'm trying to imply here, especially
Yeah.
from the Mental Archives, is that ascension is dependent upon the new and everlasting covenant, which people can take advantage of if they will. But I keep listening to all this stuff about meditating your way into ascension, the fifth dimension, all that kind of stuff, and I just scratch my head and say, well, if you have not factored the Jesus factor into it, it's not going to work. I'm just being as plain and simple as I can be about it.
Okay. How can people just go to the King James version? Is that what you're suggesting? And
Well, I've gone through the King James version to point out the commercial reality, to tell the story, and then the Menthonal, the Mayan elders came out with the Menthonal records to reinforce, from using different words, different concepts, and even they would only put it out in allegory form. Now here I am sitting here. I'm getting into the reality of it. I'm not speaking in allegories.
Yeah, that's the problem, is that there's still the allegories are still making it difficult. It's still like a mental block as to
Yeah,
how to put this into our realistic terms. It's one thing, to think about it. It's about conceptualizing it. If we were around 2,000 years ago, we'd be conceptualizing this differently. Today, in our modern day, we have to conceptualize it in a way we can understand it. And I think that's what the mental block really is, if we only had a brain.
yeah. Well, like I say, straw man. The point of this article I'm pointing to here is not so much that that we have a straw man, but pointing to what it is and then how it could be successfully used. Because again, if the straw man is put up for a surety, what are the rights of suretyship? And that's why I'm saying that if $1 trillion is discovered over here that's been stolen from the people, where does the $1 trillion go? It
Back
ain't
to the
going to China. It ain't going no place else. It's going back to the people.
I know,
And
but
if it
they've been
doesn't go
giving
back
it
to the people, that's theft.
right, but it's been given to the creditors, or
The
the
people are
trustee.
the creditors. They're
No,
the surety.
the trustees have been stealing it then.
Well, not the trustees, but I'm just trying to point to the reality
Okay, but if it hasn't been coming back to the people, so who's been taking
so far.
right so far? But who in that relationship of the trust, who's been stealing it? The trustee?
Federal Reserve System is
I
stealing it.
know,
The
but in the
IRS.
relationship, I know, but in the relationship of the trust, what position would that person take? I want to make a complete
Well,
concept of
if you're
this.
looking at it from
Any,
from trust, from the trust perspective, the bifurcated title kind
right,
of thing, so forth.
exactly. Mhm.
It's basically the state. Uh, it's kind of interesting. I listened to Roger Elvick give a description of how they funded to pay for some of these battleships. And it's interesting. He pointed out, like, for instance, the USS Missouri.
Mm.
Why do you think they called it the USS Missouri?
No.
That's where the money came from. Missouri.
So the
Yeah,
people.
Roger got this stuff figured out, pretty close. I'll put it that way. That's why I enjoy, listening or reading what he has to say. Roger's got it figured out.
I'm just trying to
And
say, in terms of the context of the trust analogy that you've used to explain parts of it, let's just finish the idea of
okay, let's
where
go
does the
back.
Federal
Okay,
Reserve
again,
fit
let's go
in
back to
the
Chapter
trust
11, debtor in
relationship?
possession, who acts as the trustee. That's who stole the money. The debtor in possession did that.
The USA
Oh,
Inc.
yeah.
Okay.
Again, operating the Chapter 11. Now the Chapter 11 is over with, and we expect the changes
Who's
because
the
again, it went into Chapter 7.
uh-huh. Who's the board
And
of directors of the USA Inc.?
what?
Federal the board. Who's the board of USA Inc.? Who's pulling those strings,
Congress.
making those decisions for
Congress.
USA
That's why
Inc.?
Trafficani got right up and put it on the congressional record.
Okay. So I'm just trying to help complete these ideas for people, because I know that for myself, I need to have, if I'm thinking about having to confirm the connections, I'm sure other people are too. So, Winston, you're not even from this planet. Would you relax?
I know it.
You just
Ain't my fault.
don't be so arrogant about it, because I know
I'm
you.
not. I'm not arrogant.
No, I know you're not arrogant, but it's kind of like you almost assume that everybody gets these connections, and I have to tell you, we're just taking baby steps. So it is, I know you're not arrogant, but but you, sadly, I think you can come across that way to people, because you don't, you know this so well. This is so, it's so ingrained in your being and psyche, but I know it's hard, to
In
believe that some
essence,
people
okay.
really have a
Listen.
hard time making these
Listen to me
connections.
now. Listen to me.
It's
In
like mental
order,
blocks we have. We have to overcome mental blocks. Sorry, go ahead.
in order for this knowledge to be inserted into the collective consciousness where it will be available for people,
Hmm.
it has to be expressed using sonic energy. That's
exactly.
why I am saying it out loud. When I do that, it becomes a part of the collective consciousness.
Yes.
And so people can, when they relate to that, then they can start to download and comprehend. And so I just have to say it out loud at least once.
Right.
And then it goes into the collective consciousness, and people can access that, never having even heard of me.
Yeah, but there's people that have mental. You see, society was engineered to have mental blocks against discovering this and connecting these dots. That's why I have to. And I'm not saying that you are arrogant. I'm saying you run the risk of appearing that way because you know this. It's so second nature to you that it's for the person who's trying to overcome these mental blocks, it's hard. It's hard to overcome mental blocks, things, constructs of ideas that were purposely inserted into our society in order to prevent us from making these connections and putting it all
Yeah.
together. That's all I'm trying to say. And I'm sorry, I don't mean I don't mean that you are arrogant because you're the most humble man I know. But it's just that you're not from here. It's kind of like
he's not from around here, is
he's
he?
not from around here.
Well, I told you I was the grand master of the hillbillies, so.
I know, and I'm doing my best to earn membership.
Well, listen. To be honest, it does take quite a bit of working up to this. But like we said last time, some of the information I give out at some of these kind of higher levels, as we call it, at least gives people something to shoot for.
Right, exactly.
Now, if I come out here, and kept giving these reports down here, then people say, okay, that's cool. But if I give something up here, though you don't understand it right now, it gives you something to shoot for, something to work up to.
Yeah, and I'm so privileged. I'll tell you, the honor is all mine to be here and to be with you and presenting this information. But I do feel that there's a responsibility with that, and that is definitely to make sure that there's certain things that I think were just designed to block us from making
That's
connections to help people insert the key and unlock that block to help make because it expands our world so much when we hear this kind of information. It makes us look at things in such a completely different way, and it really is like it's like a lock and key on our own brains. It's like on our own mental construct, our ability to cognize these concepts. It's almost as if it's been blocked from reaching these higher levels of constructs, these higher level constructs.
Well, what might be helpful for
Mental
people is to go on
constructs.
one of those walking meditations like what that pilgrim was talking about.
Yeah.
It would be really helpful. Like I say, she called it, life at 3 miles an hour.
Yeah.
People jump in cars and they go, 60 or 70 miles an hour to accomplish something, or get in an airplane and go 400 or 500 miles an hour to accomplish something like that. But sometimes
screen share
you
first.
need to slow down. You need to slow down to 3 miles an hour to get the reality of what it is. Because human beings were designed for 3 miles an hour, not 400 miles an hour. So anyway, let's not.
I understand.
I
I just hope
appreciate the position you're taking.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. But still, I have to give people something to shoot for.
Oh, I agree, but don't, just understand that I feel a responsibility to help them in some way, including myself, but to help them in some way to unlock those, I think those, I don't know, I have to come up with a really good way to describe this. I think I did okay before, but they're kind of like constructs they're like lock boxes in our minds.
Yeah.
And that they're like little lock boxes that each step of the way, each concept, there has to be a key to unlock in order to access that, in order to make that connection. Because, literally, because I think there has been aspects of our consciousness that have been artificially suppressed.
Yeah.
And so, that's what I'm saying. And I think
it's kind of like those little, those, I forgot what they call them, those little Russian dolls, where you take the head off of it and there's another doll that comes out, you take the head off that. So or like peeling an onion.
They're nesting dolls.
You
Yeah,
got
there's
to,
another
you
name
got to
for it.
work your way down to some of these kind of
Exactly.
things. But again, you can do it, but you can't do it if it's not available to you. So I am sonically
Right.
implanting this knowledge, which apparently has been lost for a long time, into the collective consciousness, so that when people come to it, it's available.
Hmm. Yeah, when I tell people, when I comment on people's comments on Facebook, sometimes
Yeah,
people will say something about, Jesus dying for our sins. That's always an opportunity for me to say, for our debts.
yeah. There you
He
go.
died for our debts. Don't, you have to look at this from a commercial perspective.
Yeah.
It gets interesting, the comments and
Well,
conversations.
good,
You
good.
know,
People are thinking.
well, well, sometimes they don't have
Uh,
very nice things to say in my response, but because they're not, these are just a whole other level of looking at
yeah.
religion as not as the religion that we were indoctrinated to believe. This is,
No.
I think, this is our hardest thing, Winston, to overcome. These it's like a brick wall. It's your reality is made of a brick wall, and when you start disassembling a brick wall, you need to have something to replace it with. But it's our reality. It's the matrix, and what's happening is the matrix is changing because we are becoming more aware of it, but we just don't know the specifics of it. But this information
Well,
gives you the specifics of it
yeah,
and how to break down that wall. That's
yeah. That's what
what I'm
solution
saying.
commerce has been about all
Right.
this time.
Exactly.
Like I say, I'm not Jesus. I'm not here to save the world, but I can do my part.
Exactly. We all.
I can do my part, and so that's what I'm trying to do.
Right.
And if everybody does their part, then we have
Right.
pretty good program going on. But you break down those brick walls with knowledge, and that's what we're trying to do with these goldfish reports is to give the people the knowledge
Right.
that when that brick wall comes down, they have something they can rely upon.
Right.
Well, like I said, everything I say is not exactly right, but I'm putting out enough truth that people could go and take those things and reconstruct a comprehension. So when a brick wall comes down, like I say, lucky for me, and lucky for everybody else.
Could you just take it off a screen share so we can see your face as you're
No,
talking?
we'll go on.
Well,
Like I
because
said,
to finish the analogy of, the straw man and Wizard of Oz, what happened at the end when they realized there was no Oz and they
well, we're
all,
going to get into that, but you have to
okay,
understand the components of it. Frank
okay,
Baum was smart. He understood all these things, but he put
right,
it into fiction. Cause he couldn't come right out and say it outright.
right,
I'm saying the same things that Frank Baum was saying. I'm using different words
right, exactly,
that are more specific to commerce and the way that people talk and understand things.
right,
So I'm talking about the real world. I'm not on a journey to Oz. I'm in Kansas.
right. Because at the end, she, wakes. I
She
mean, not
tried
only
to get back to Kansas.
right, she tried to get back to Kansas. She realized at the end that it was all just uh, this man behind a
Fiction.
curtain. Yeah, it
It's
was
a
fiction.
fiction.
It was all this man behind a curtain, and there was
Yeah.
nothing to really fear. And then on her way to getting back home, she encounters this wicked witch, blah, blah, blah. But the whole idea was when at the end, she wakes up and realizes it was only a dream. Now, these are huge, significant,
Well,
this is,
yeah.
yeah, these parallels are not, these are analogies that are huge. It's not, that's the whole moral of the story is that when we wake
Yeah.
up, when we do go back to where home is, which is back to creator, it was all a dream.
Yeah. And so again, like I say, Frank Baum was doing a great service with these fictional stories
Right.
because like I say, when all this other stuff started, one of the biggest eye openers for all the people who were studying commercial redemption, all these kind of things, was the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was just worked and worked and worked until people were trying to understand and comprehend using the fiction, the analogies and stuff that Frank Baum was putting out.
Right.
And
Which,
so,
we just
yeah,
keep rowing our boats, Winston. Just keep rowing our boats.
well, we all do that. And like I say, we're all on this journey. We're all on this journey. and I'm on a journey, and so are you. It may be that I'm 2 or 3 steps ahead of some others, maybe, but we're still on this journey together. And so when I take 2 or 3 steps, and I find something, then I say, hey, let me mark the trail over here. Let me put up some yellow paint on a tree or something so that people would know, here's the trail.
Right.
And so that's basically all I'm doing. You remember that Pilgrim talked about that one fellow that went and took that yellow paint and painted arrows so that people wouldn't get lost.
Yeah.
On the pilgrimage.
Right.
That's all I'm doing. I'm just taking some yellow paint or whatever and
Right.
making a mark so that people would know that, hey, Winston passed by here, some time ago. Because like I say, I'm on my journey. And so, am I going to, keep circling back and circling back and circling back? That's why we do these reports. So that people would know, some steps or some elements of that journey that might be helpful. They might be. And so here on the GoldFish report, we're putting the yellow paint arrows up and say, hey, look over here, and so again, I need to give people something to shoot for, because I am 2 or 3 steps ahead.
Yeah.
It's obvious.
2 or 3 dimensions.
Yeah, maybe. But like I say, I would feel morally responsible to do that, and I do feel morally responsible to do that. What does it cost me? Sometimes the costs get pretty high, and same thing with you.
Yep.
What we're doing here is very expensive in more ways than people would realize. And so, like I say, I feel a certain moral responsibility to do that. And so do you. And so then it's incumbent upon those who receive the energy that we're giving to them to share that energy with others. And if it takes a red pill or a red pill suppository to get that information going,
Absolutely.
That's just what it takes, folks.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I've had conversations with people recently about that. And you're going to have to, people are just going to have to, because I think it's very widely discussed among people who are awake that the ones who are not awake are holding back the progress. That's a lot. That's a common view. And that if they could sit down and look at some of the evidence and discussions that really, instead of just believing what the mainstream media wants them to believe and think, and start critically thinking and analyzing things, because they always have some kind of general response for things, which it's not based on any facts. And if they started to get into the facts, they would have to start doing this. And, one way or the other, you either choke it down or, you get the suppository.
Get it a different way.
Exactly.
Well, we just like to kind of, chuckle about some of those kind of things, but it's true. But it's true. Anyway, let's get back. We need to move forward a little bit. I'm not going to get
behind time.
Let's see, what was it I was on now? Oh, here. Yeah, here's where we left off on this one. Again, trying to interpret, in words in commerce and concepts in commerce that are important to understand. So if the surety is required to pay or perform due to the principal's failure to do so, the law will usually give the surety a right of subrogation. That's important word to learn. Allowing that person to recover the cost of making payments or performance on the principal's behalf, even in the absence of an express agreement to that effect between the surety and principal. So again, suretyship is an important concept. And that's why that one short sentence in Hebrews should put people in the mind to think that through. Hebrews 7:22. Jesus is the surety. And if he's the surety, what rights of suretyship does he have through subrogation? Now, fortunately, he was a very kind fellow, or very kind God, because we have not spoken yet of heirship and joint heirship, which is available. Maybe this next time or sometime in the future, we'll go into heirship and joint heirship. Because again, as the surety, what kind of demands could he make of me as the principal on the debt? If he paid the debt, then what claim does he have on me? He could get me to be jumping through a hoop if he wanted to. But again, the concept of heirship. He said that if we will suffer as he suffered, then we can be a joint heir with him. Now, that don't mean you got to get crucified and get beat with Roman whips and all that kind of stuff. But what did he do for others? See? And so look at his life as an example. What did he do for other people? See what I mean?
Right.
So when you start talking about service to others,
right,
could you use the concept of service to others to obtain a position as a joint heir? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And so these narcissistic individuals that simply are completely service to self, man, they're really cutting themselves short. But anyway, let's not get into that. Let's go a little bit further here because we're going to run out of time.
We do want to go back to that. We do want to return to that conversation sometime, Winston.
Well, we can if you want to bring it up.
It's a very good conversation to have. I think people would really appreciate this.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I say, it's like, Paul said, if it was for only this life that we live, we among all people would be most miserable. If it was only for this life. See, if it was only for the third dimension that we live, we among all the entities in the universe would be most miserable. Again, back to the everlasting covenant, the problems that caused. So finally, the Holy Ghost gets in the middle of it and says, hey, we got to fix this. Right. And in the allegory, they did fix it. Okay? So the opportunities of the new and everlasting covenant are available through the Holy Ghost. See? And so I'm trying to interrelate, some of these concepts in such a way that it would make sense to people. And that's why we talk in commercial terms, to make the points.
Right.
So that we can start to have joinder. Joining the physical with the spiritual. So that the physical and the spiritual become one under unity. And that's the way you're going to ascend. You're not going to ascend because you meditate. There's more to it.
It's your actions.
That's what I'm trying.
That's what I'm trying
to point out.
I have to tell you, Winston, you couldn't be more correct, because I think the pitfall for people who are for the whole New Age movement, you're all absolutely misled.
Yeah.
Because you don't get it. You think you get it, but you don't get it.
The New Age, was ascension without responsibility. Bullshit.
Yeah, if you only sit there and focus on yourself, then your meditation and yourself, not to say that's a bad thing to do, but if it's what you're focusing on,
get out and do something.
You got to get out and do something to help other people. If you're not every day doing something to help people, then Jesus is not going to be the surety for you.
Yeah, people might accuse me of being a Bible thumper, and I am. I'm a Bible thumper. Perhaps not in the way the other Bible thumpers do it.
Right.
But where can you go to hear this? Have you ever gone to any church? and heard what I've said about the Bible?
No.
Because they don't have it. Now I'm making it available. And if you perceive these things, if you take them into your heart, it's because the Holy Ghost has inspired you to receive these things.
Right.
And that is a true statement.
That's very true.
Yeah.
I think
Anyway,
so.
let's go along. Huh? Yeah, let's go
Right.
along.
So if he suffered as he did, if we suffer as he did suffer, we will be heirship with him.
Yeah.
So that's,
Look at the word suffer,
yeah.
because Jesus said, suffer the little children to come to me. Suffer, which means allow in that context.
Mm.
Because, the apostles were trying to hold the crowd back, hold people back. The little child was trying to get to Jesus. And he said, suffer the little children to come to me. And then he made another statement, which he's presently working on very diligently. And that is, he said, rather than offend one of these little ones, he said it would be better that a millstone hanged about your neck and you were thrown into the depths of the ocean. And so who do you think the main worker, at least behind the scenes, is on this pedophile problem? It's Jesus. Yeah, is he here now working on it? Yes, he is. And so, there's all these things we have to get corrected, get fixed and everything. And so when Jesus says, suffer the little children, what he means is suffer innocence to become a part of your life. And how do you get to innocence? To put aside all of your debts/sins. And it's prepaid. You can become innocent. Remember that last time I was showing you that chart about getting to zero. Go vertical and you've created another zero. These technologies and stuff in commerce that we have proposed, such as accepted for value, will create zero balance.
So as you said in our last report, so the thief, all he had to do was accept because what his sins were prepaid. Jesus prepaid them. So
Yes.
all he had to do was accept that. The murderer, though, was not able to be redeemed.
He didn't accept.
He didn't accept.
First off, he couldn't, because he had shed innocent blood. Anyway,
So,
let's not go too deep into that again. Look, I need to move around.
no, I understand, but I know. And these are complicated. Look, they're very in depth. But there's a reason. But okay, whatever. That does play a role in this, but we won't go into that at this point. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, the act of becoming a surety is called also a guarantee. Traditionally, a guarantee was distinguished from surety in that the surety's liability was joint and primary with the principal, whereas the guarantee's liability was ancillary derivative, but many jurisdictions have abolished this distinction. In the United States, under Article 3 of the Uniform Commercial Code, a person signs a negotiable instrument as surety is termed an accommodation party. Such a party may be able to assert defenses up to the enforcement of an instrument not available to the maker of the instrument. Yeah, so that's UCC 3-419. If you want to go study that about accommodation party, because sometimes we sign as accommodation party, which actually puts us in the position to assume the suretyship or whatever it is we're doing. Okay.
Say that again. That's UCC 4-13.
No, UCC 3-419. A signature by accommodation.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, it's not written here, so I was just kind of. I was writing something else and I didn't hear it, the whole thing. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
All right. Let's see if I want to go into all this. Well, yeah, here's a definition that you might want to no, this is a discussion of, this is out of Bovier's. Now, this is not a commercial dictionary. Bovier's is a law dictionary. All right, so discussion about civil law, a proceeding on the part of a surety by which the property of the principal debtor is made liable before resort can be had to the sureties. This is called benefit of discussion. Now, again, this is on the law side. This is on the private side. Anyway, I'm just bringing some of these things up, so people can go, because you've never heard of benefit of discussion, have you?
No.
It's in the law.
No. Believe it or not, I learned it from, wait a minute, Pirates of the Caribbean, and it was called, what was that term when a pirate? Sorry.
Booty.
No. When a
letters of marque.
Parlay.
Oh, parlay. Yeah. Well, that's pirate lingo for.
It is pirate lingo, but it's this concept that even if they're like enemies, they'll take a break for parlay. So there's like, they'll have this discussion.
Well, yeah, what they're saying is what you're doing right here, it has detrimental effects. How about we come to some kind of agreement so that both of us benefit from what's going on here?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so this straw man stuff is starting to sound like gambling or a wagering scheme.
Mm.
It is. It's wagering. You remember we talked about risk?
Yeah.
You have to take a risk in reference to what we were talking about, the mortgage banks and all that kind of stuff. They were getting the maximum benefit, but had not risked anything.
Okay, but how do they benefit from this if they're poisoning us and making us all so sick that we can't? They're banking.
I'm talking about commercial banking on mortgages now. I'm not talking about anything else.
Well, I know, but I'm talking about the fact that our birth certificates are these commodities for their futures. They're based on our future productivity. But if so many people become so sick, we don't have a productive workforce anymore. That has to. So what kind of? Well, and this is where it's going. This is where it's going.
That's a bunch of stupid reptilians that got no better sense than to try something like that.
Right. Okay. Because if they start poisoning us and start, giving us vaccinations and making us unproductive.
Well, it doesn't make any sense to a moral person, but to a reptilian psychopath, it makes perfect sense.
Gotcha. Okay. So there's no explanation. Okay.
No, not from our moral standpoint, no, but from a reptilian cabal standpoint, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, because if there's attrition among the workforce, there's no more productivity, and the model will collapse.
They don't want it.
Yeah, the model will collapse that they created.
That's why you remember one of the discussions I had talked about was about redundancy. The system is set up to fail.
Yes, it truly is. And
it's redundant.
Yes.
And that's why we're still driving around in combustion, internal combustion engine vehicles.
Well,
it's about redundancy.
But I think it's what started happening. This attrition started happening of the productivity. So they had to come up with quantitative easing, which of course was just another delay in the inevitable collapse, wasn't?
Yeah.
Right. So that's what they. Okay.
Yeah, like I said, we're trying to put people in the mindset of what is it going to be like on the other side of NESARA. On the other side, will a lot of these things that we've had to deal with over here go away? And the answer is yes, but because people have never experienced freedom, they won't know what to do. And so we're trying to prep people, at least think about it. What is it going to be like on the other side of NESARA when you have more freedom than you previously had before that? And you need to think about it. I mean, we always tell people, don't jump or don't leap until you know what you're jumping into. And people have never experienced freedom. And so if all of a sudden they're exposed to freedom, cognitive dissonance sets in.
They'll put themselves back in that prison.
Or they'll try to repeat what they come out of.
Right.
And we can't have that.
No.
We can't have that. And so if all this energy and effort has gone into putting us into freedom and we reject it, what the hell good did it do to put you into that? You see what I mean? And so these are things that we need to consider. What's going to happen when we're free? And it's going to cause a great deal of cognitive dissonance, great deal of it. And so we have to work with people. We have to work with them. If we see them trying to implement the things we got away from, we have to put a stop to it. Say, no, we're not doing it that way anymore. That's why I say I'm not willing to trade one tyranny for just another tyranny. We're not doing that. Mm-hmm. And if it takes galactic intervention to stop it, it'll happen. Because, okay, here I am on my soapbox again.
Soapbox? Anyway. Okay, huh? Winston Soapbox. We should call this report Winston Soapbox. Okay, good.
Well, I'm just trying. I'm trying to be just as practical as I can be.
It's good. No, it adds. I'm telling you, Winston. You just you lead us down these roads that twist and turn. It's not the yellow. It's not the yellow brick road. It may be part of the yellow brick road, but not in. But the yellow brick road to our awakening to this dream that we're in.
Well, that's why I say, the yellow brick road was gold bricks.
Yes, gold bricks, exactly.
And that's why I say, what we're doing with the correction of the currency and some of these things is only a step toward freedom. It's not freedom.
Right.
It's a step toward it. Mm-hmm. Now, when we finally get to the point where we get rid of the problem with gold, we get rid of the problem with money, people become free. What will they do? That's what I'm worried about. What will they do when they are free?
Well, that's when they can go to meditation and look within and find what their gifts are, and find what their gifts truly are, and and spend their lifetime enjoying and developing a hobby or whatever gift that they've been given. I mean, that's what I would do.
Okay, well, let's real quick. Like I say, I don't want to. I mean, I could spend 2 days on this.
I know, but Winston, you have to realize.
Have the time.
No, but you have to
I'll send you this
sometimes,
article. You can put it up.
I know, but you have to realize we need to clarify things and put things into a bigger picture as we go along. So it may take us longer to get through the material than you want.
We can come back to it maybe if we have to. But again, like I say, when people first come on the concept of the straw man, they become angry.
Yes.
I'm trying to get them past the anger. Say, look, here's how this can be used. Right now it's being used against you.
Right.
But with Solutions in Commerce, we show you how to use that to your advantage.
Exactly. Wakey.
Yeah. Like I say, like I said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I'm thoroughly, as far as it goes, that the system that was proposed is a very good system. And if it wasn't for the crooks and criminals, I believe that it would work out very well for people. And so we're trying to backtrack and correct some of the problems, get people out of the problems that they've, fallen victim to. It's my moral responsibility to do so. And so that's what Solutions in Commerce has been about all this time. It's to get in, learn how to stop being a victim of this and start to use it as the beneficiary, because it's there for you. It's there for you. You just didn't know it yet. And so as Solutions in Commerce, I've tried to, show, give a few hints and clues about how you could use these things to accomplish what it is you're trying to accomplish in this life. So anyway, let's look at this other definition here. It says property designates those things commonly recognized as the entities in respect of which a person or group has exclusive rights. Important types of property include real property, personal property, intellectual property. Okay, a right of ownership is associated with property that establishes the goods as being one's own thing in relationship to other individuals or groups, assuring the owner the right to dispense with the property in a manner he or she sees fit, whether to use it or not use, exclude others from using it, or to transfer ownership. Some philosophers assert that property rights from social convention. Others find origins for them in morality or natural law. Now, this straw man
Mm-hmm.
that has been the plague of so many people for so long, what we show is how to become the owner of the straw man. This is what we were doing with Uniform Commercial Code UCC financing statements. That was some of the very first operations that we did at Solutions in Commerce, is to turn the straw man into your property. And then when it's your property, then you can dispense of it or do whatever you want to with it, instead of having somebody use it to beat you on the head with it.
Or,
See, and so there's nothing wrong with the straw man concept, not at all. We have to have it in our present commercial system, and because capitalism is a Christian invention. It's not pagan at all. The pagans don't do their commerce this way. They do it by barter, trade. They don't put fictions into their commerce, but there is a limit to how much commerce they can do using that system. And with the 7 or 8 billion people on the planet, paganism, this wouldn't work, to be perfectly honest. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that system, not at all. But see, when this earth, if you go back to that Pleiadian perspective book, the Maura Kuan Yin put out, she talked about the various colonies that was put onto planet Earth.
mm-hmm.
And it was only 2,000 or 3,000 people. So did 2,000 or 3,000 people in the colony need money? No, they could do the barter. They could do the pagan system.
Mm-hmm.
But now we got 7 or 8 billion here. How's that going to work? It doesn't.
No.
So that's why we have converted to capitalism, because of the number of souls who want to be here. I mean, we got billions of souls on the planet now.
It's crazy.
Well, it is. It makes it very difficult to provide a system to accommodate that many souls on the planet this small at the same time.
Well,
So
this can't be the first planet that's got all these souls on it.
Well, I don't know that, but what I'm trying to say to you is, because we do have all these people, all these souls and stuff on the planet, a system had to be created to accommodate 7 or 8 billion people. That's the system that we have. Now, unscrupulous individuals have taken advantage of that and tried to enslave people using the very same system that was created for their benefit. That's why I've tried to go back, to 2,000 years ago, to the days of Jesus, to show you how the system is set up.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the plan of salvation. It's called the plan of redemption. And then we have capitalized it because of the vast number of people that are on the planet. And if used properly, it does work. That's what Solutions in Commerce have been about, is to show you how the system works and how to get rid of some of the criminals and crooks that have caused you the problems. That's what we've done. And like I say, at the very least, I have injected sonically this information in the collective consciousness. It's there. It's there. If I was to die tomorrow, the information is still there. You see what I mean? Anyway, let's see. I don't know how much more.
I tell you, it's just these mental blocks that people have.
Well, yeah,
we've all had them, and that's the, it's like, who put these mental blocks on us like this?
Well, unscrupulous reptiles. Let's see. Like I say, I'll send this article to you.
Okay.
Because I go into here's the application for the Social Security thing.
Well, that's how we consented and agreed to be the surety, through this, right?
Yeah, number 16 down here, your signature. How did you sign the thing? You probably did just like I did. But if you'll go to Uniform Commercial Code Article 3 in that section there, that that 3-419, in that area there's about 15 or 20 different ways you can sign anything.
Winston, my
but
card.
huh?
But some people get them when they're children. They can't sign them. Some people get them as infants.
I
How can you
know.
sign
I'm
it?
not going to worry about all that stuff. But what I'm
Okay.
saying to you is, it's the signature, your signature, that gives life to all these things that we're dealing with. So how are you going to sign something?
Mm-hmm.
See, so here I show a a definition of signatures and
Mm-hmm.
like that. Okay, so I'll send this to you, and you can put it up. People can review it. It might be helpful to them. At least I hope that it is.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like I say, there's many of us who have come to the planet with different gifts and so forth. And my gift apparently is to understand the system perhaps at a deeper level than most people would normally. And so I'm trying to share. I'm trying to share that. And if it's useful to people, I'm glad. If it's not useful, maybe they ought to be pagans.
No, but I'll tell you, it's very reassuring, though. I mean, I'd rather it have a benevolent purpose ultimately than just be designed as, more tyranny. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, we got to get out of anger.
Mm,
I mean, I've seen so many angry, quote unquote, patriots. They're all mad. You don't get anywhere with anger and madness. But a lot of that anger and so forth, once it's fully comprehended,
mhm.
hopefully that anger will be diminished or even go away, because anger is a very, very low vibrational emotion,
It is.
very low.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to operate on anger, how in the dickens are you going to ever ascend? Because you can't raise your vibrations with anger.
Mm-hmm.
It don't work.
No, no, anger, if you channel it in a positive way, that's a different story. Like, I could be very angry, and I never talked about this on Goldfish Report, but um, through the court system, my children were kidnapped from me, and it was a very horrible experience to go through, and it's really still a very difficult. It's not over, it's not over, and I've been strapped in litigation for 7 years, and I could be very angry about it. But
Well, well,
I'd rather take my anger. But this is a good example, because I'd rather take my anger and channel it to a higher frequency, a higher vibration, and take action on that. And
yeah.
and in doing so, I create Goldfish Report, which turns out a very good high vibration. And what it does is it informs people of how the world is constructed, and how we can navigate through it far better, and stop running into these problems of um, you know being you know being, I would say, what's the word I'm looking for, subjugated maybe under the system that we have. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
there is a term
Slaves.
that you
Sorry.
can replace anger with. It's called righteous indignation.
Okay, that's a good one.
Righteous indignation, where you see something that's wrong and you have a very strong feeling to correct it. Because you remember, even Jesus himself, when he went into the temple and the money changers, he kicked their tables over and they whooped them up, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's called
Amen.
righteous indignation,
Right.
which is different than anger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Anyway,
he's.
that's pretty much like I say. I haven't, like I say, we kind of. Well, basically, that's about all I want to say about it right now.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't mean to meander so much, but I thought it was important to
No, that's fine.
understand, because as light bulbs go off for me as we move along, I
Yeah.
know light bulbs are going off for other people, and I just want to make sure. I know there's some viewers, like we have viewers at all stages, though, Winston. We have viewers who are right on par with you. We have viewers who are like where I'm at, and then we have viewers who are just going to listen, and they're going to be like trying to understand this, and I really am trying to make it at least if not fully, if not completely comprehensible for people, at least put make a few light bulbs go on within themselves, so it'll compel them to keep looking for
Well,
more
yeah,
light
I'm
forms.
just trying.
You
I'm
know
just
what I mean?
trying to give people a philosophical goose.
You know what
You
it's
know,
like? It's like being in a big, warehouse, right? And
yeah.
and you put this light bulb on, and it only lights up this amount of space. And it's like, or being in, no, it's like being in a tunnel, right? So this light bulb's only going to be, it's only going to light up a certain amount of space. When you get to a certain point in your tunnel where you have to find the next light bulb to turn on so you can see a little bit further. And
Yeah.
then, and
Hmm.
that's really, I think, a good analogy, because it
Yeah,
really,
it is.
and it's how it feels to me. So, because always light is going to, and it's a perfect analogy, Winston, because it certainly shines the light on the darkness, and it dissipates that darkness. And as far as we can go in that, as far as that light bulb will illuminate our path, we have to find that next light bulb to then illuminate the next section of that path, so we can get through. It's I think, a good analogy, but if I only had a brain.
Well, like I say, it gives people, opportunity to think about that. If I only had a brain. So how much am I like the straw man? Do I have a brain? Am I using the brain that God gave me? To what extent am I using the brain that God gave me? And then we have to go again, one step up from that, which is
Right.
the heart. And so we try to
Exactly.
encourage people to move up to where you start to, operate from your heart and not from your brain. So, like I say, it's a progression. I
Mm,
mean, you just don't jump, from the first grade to senior in high school. You just don't do that. You have to work at it until you get to the point that you can comprehend,
mm,
what you're going to find when you're a senior. And so, like I say, everybody's on their own level or whatever. But again, a lot of times I just have to give some, I mean, all the lower schools are all shooting for that high school, aren't they? They're trying to get to be a senior, because the seniors, man, they got status.
mm.
They can do all these things, man. They can go to the sock hop, they can drive cars, they can do all kinds of things. So the lower classmen, are saying, hey, how can I get up there?
Right.
And so that's kind of what I'm doing, and just for a
That's true.
funny, just
That's
for
true.
a funny, because we need to cut this off. Like I said a minute ago, a lot of these things I say, even though they might sound, way out there, at the very least, I'm just trying to give people a psychological goose. You know what a goose is, don't you?
A poke.
Well, do you know what a wild goose is? About 6 inches off center.
It looks like, I don't know. I think someone's trying to hack into my computer right now, Winston. So maybe it's
I'll tell them to
time
drop
to
dead. Yeah, okay.
end. Tell them to drop dead. Is that what you said? I'll do that.
Yeah,
I'll do
go give them a wild goose.
that. Go give him a wild goose. Well, thank you. What a wonderful discussion, Winston. Thank you very much. I hope that it has helped people, because I really started to see a lot of light bulbs go off as I make my way down that tunnel. And the illumination from each report allows us to go a little further
Yeah,
down that path. Um, you know, and I so I'm hopeful that it's helpful to people. That's all I can say.
yeah.
Well,
Just,
thanks.
just remember, you heard it from a hillbilly.
Yeah, I never know. You can learn from a hillbilly. Don't ever underestimate hillbillies.
Look out for them hillbilly preachers, man. You
Yeah.
never know what's going to happen.
In trouble. Thanks, Winston. I hope you have a great weekend. We'll be back next week with another Country Roads. And of course, we'll be back on Monday with our POTUS reports. We do have some really special interviews scheduled coming up, but I'm not going to announce them, because when I do, somebody hacks my computer. So I'm not going to do that. But
Well,
we're
good,
just going to surprise you like we always do.
good.
So, yeah, and Winston will be with us on some of those too. So we'll have some fun. So, to
Oh,
everybody,
yeah.
yeah, gonna have some fun. Gotta have some fun, Winston, right? So,
That's it, man. If you ain't having fun, man, you're doing it wrong.
So we hope you all have a really great weekend. We hope you make Goldfish Report part of your weekend and that you enjoy these conversations with Winston, because this is really valuable information. And we do appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us, Winston. We truly do. Thank you.
Well, like I say, it's what I was sent to do.
That's why I said you're not from around here. So
I,
thank you.
I, I'm not from around here.
I know. Okay. So thank you to everybody. Thanks to Winston. And have a great weekend, folks. And we will see you soon. Thanks for viewing. And this concludes this edition, 270th edition of the Goldfish Report.